Very good morning. I'm glad you've kept it with Morning at NTV, wherever you are watching. For those that are just joining us, welcome on board. We're coming to you live from the Kampala Serena Conference Center. And it's time for our Kickstarter discussion, a look at the political landscape in the country. There's a lot that has been happening. The latest, of course, being the fracas within the National Unity Platform that has seen what appears to be a standoff between the principal, that is Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, and the deputy president of the party for Uganda region, Mathias Mpuuga, who is also the immediate former leader of opposition in government. The woes surrounding Mr. Mpuuga seem to have what is being seen as a valid foundation from the point of view of the National Unity Platform. The party is asking if we are to hold anybody else to account for gross corruption, graft, how can we fail to come in and rein in on our very own? Those who are being accused say that it's a witch hunt. There was a statement that was issued by the man in the eye of the storm, Mathias Mpuuga. He claimed there is a grandstanding on the part of the honchos at the National Unity Platform. Is it so? That's a question I cannot answer as Chris Higenyi. I have with me Godber Tumushabe, a political analyst and a seasoned commentator. He knows the ins and outs of Uganda's politics. Many thanks for joining us.
Great pleasure to be here, Chris. Good morning, our viewers.
And many thanks for joining us. Very first time to have Gerald Karuhanga here on Morning at NTV as a moderator. I'm sure you may have been here before. My tenure, so to speak.
Thank you, and good morning, viewers.
Let me first get your overview of events as they are right now, and I would like to focus on the National Unity Platform. There has been what appears to be tension and an inability to come to a common ground on the approach of this particular dilemma that the National Unity Platform finds itself in. If it is a witch hunt, well, that's a point of view. But shouldn't we work on certain things because somebody will accuse another of orchestrating a witch hunt? Let's allow our very new guest, Gerald Karuhanga, to go first in terms of courtesy.
Thank you very much. Well, our colleagues in the National Unity Platform Party, I think for me, they may have ongoings. They may have issues. Just probably like it's happening even to other parties as well. I think that one can't say that doesn't need attention. It needs serious attention. We must all be accountable before the law. And if there are errors, they need to certainly be addressed, and addressed in a rather very impressive, but also in a way that communicates that the party takes principles very seriously, but also is cohesive. So they must also not play in the hands of the regime, because they could really take the advantage of what's going on. And so, and I think what's probably, what could be happening in NUP is probably also happening in other parties, but the most critical thing is, as a party, do you work out means to resolve the challenges that you face, and most importantly, keep the focus on the nation, on the country called Uganda? Because the young man that is looking for a job, or the lady who is struggling to give birth in Kapelebyong,
that's right,
or this coffee farmer that is looking for a decent price for his coffee, or the tea farmer that is literally cutting down his or her garden. They want to hear us who are political players focus on the issues that really concern them. And so I think the challenges that are prevalent in the parties could be dealt with as fast and amicably as possible, principally, yes, but the focus must keep on, do we have a status, or do we create a platform where we ensure that there is serious work ongoing to have change happen in government for the first time in a peaceful way. So I think that's what we need to keep our eyes on. Because if, I mean, for me, these are largely diversionary engagements in a sense. So however, I mean, they are prevalent, we have to discuss them, but our eyes must remain on the ball. how do we ensure that Uganda for the first time sees a peaceful transition from one leader to another, but not just from one leader, but to decent leadership.
Okay. I'm sure you do agree with that, Godber Tumushabe. But the structure of politics in Uganda means that you cannot, for example, fail to attend to the small aspects within the corridors of your own political party before you attend to the national interest issues. Is there any chance that we can change that?
No, you say generally what Gerald says is accurate, but you see, I've actually raised this issue. I think that my view is that the media and many other people are misleading us. They are diverting us from the real issues.
Okay.
Because you see, what is happening in NUP is only inevitable. If anything, Ugandans must congratulate the people who are in NUP, who are in FDC, who are in ANT, that even with the kind of resources that are deployed by the regime to disorganize these parties, that these people are still there struggling. We need to congratulate them, because I meet many of our elite people who are saying, oh, you know, those people are not serious, this one is not serious. And you ask them, for you who is serious, what are you doing? And they can't answer that question.
Okay.
We need to understand that right from 2011, the election of 2011, that's when President Museveni declared publicly that he's going to finish all these political parties. And he has been consistent.
So he said he will eat us like samosas. You can imagine.
Yeah. He has been consistent. Now, in more serious countries, if you were a president of a country who has been elected, and you have sought to protect and defend the constitution, and you declare that you are going to try to destroy political parties, these are organizations that are registered and recognized by law, I don't think you would remain president in serious countries. But you know, here, a president says it, and you know, people discuss it as if it is normal. We have seen since then the NRM, we saw the fight that they managed with within the UPC, and they were able to basically push out Oraro Tuna and his group and remain with one group of Akena, and appoint one of the UPC leaders in the government. We saw that.
Yeah.
We saw how they co-opted Norbert Mao. So in other words, that means you've co-opted one section of DP.
Of Democratic
But
Party.
remember that the opposition political groups or political leaders to get into government and work with the ruling government, ruling party, it's not a problem. But normally, if these are serious people, you negotiate consensus on certain policy goals.
Isn't that what Norbert Mao did?
What did he negotiate, and what has he offered? Do you know anything that he negotiated for him to join? And has he offered anything that, because he's now over a year in the government, can he account for the fact that I negotiated with NRM on certain issues that, like Gerald raised here, on health care, on constitutionalism, on education? We negotiated on how to pursue this one, and they have delivered. So, in other words, even what is I think for what is happening now with some of these groups, remember that normally the political leaders who normally challenge the status quo within these parties, they are the ones who normally get regime protection. So you'll see them. I mean, you can even see even with Matthias Mpuga in NUP, you see how the regime social media warriors, you know, are the ones who normally say UNUP is being unfair to Mpuga. You feel like, when did they begin to be sympathetic to the opposition politicians? So the point I want to emphasize is that we have a country that is in a crisis. We have a country that has embedded corruption, that all of a sudden you have a corrupt regime whose DNA has become corruption. You have a country where businesses are closing. You talk to business people across the board, and you feel the pain that they are going through. You have a country that has failed to deliver an education system that really includes every child in the country. I have said time and again that when you follow UBOS data, between 1997, when UP was introduced, and 2022, when the last cohort of primary 7 children sat for PRE, I mean, when they finished their P7, there are 26 million children that are unaccounted for, that did not reach P7. That's half of Uganda's population. All you get is, every beginning of the year, you get the ministers in education, they sit at a press conference, talk about the 30% who transitioned to P7, and none of them talks about the 70% who got lost in the system. And this, remember, these are 4 ministers. Yeah. Which itself is corruption, because I think it is corruption to have 4 ministers in one ministry, because they are doing nothing. So, I mean, I can go on and on and on and say, this country, we have a crisis in terms of governance. We are here struggling. This is a country 62 years after independence. We've never had a successful transition of power from one president to another, from one political party to another. And you see President Museveni here building a caliphate. First of all, he becomes a life president. Now he's working to get his son to be president. And Ugandans are busy. They are discussing NUP. They are discussing FDC. I don't understand why, you know, educated people, because Ugandans are highly educated people. They are exposed. So I think that most of those discussions, in my view, they are footnotes. We need to redirect ourselves and say, do we actually have a country? We Ugandans, do we really own a country? Are we citizens or we are subjects? I think that's what we need to be really looking at.
That's a very good challenge, no doubt. But many times, for example, when an average Ugandan looks at what can I do in order to inch forward on this particular goal, everyone has to work within the means that they have. And that is exactly why Morning at NTV decides that we can have conversations about these issues.
Yeah, well, that's
good point.
Okay. But
Yeah.
you know, look, there
Chris
was...
is saying he's playing his role.
Well, yeah, and thank you, Chris. You know, recently, URA released some very unbelievable statistics.
Okay.
And then they seem to be true, that the companies that were declaring making over 100 billion shillings have reduced from 125 to 6.
That were declaring over 100 billion in taxes.
In taxes, yes, that were declaring over 100 billion. Have reduced from 125 to just 6. The ones that were between 50 and 100 billion have reduced from 130 to 3. The ones that were making between 500 to 1 billion shillings, or 50 to 500 million shillings around there, have reduced from 10,000 to 1,000. Now,
and that is the real discussion.
If you see what's going on downtown in Chikubo, every day how people are fighting with URA, physically, literally. Yeah,
the fights are on. Even yesterday, Mujoki was
amazing.
And you really see this trader, this lady who wakes up very early morning, saying, at least my child can go to school. Can also, you know, become a Christian. I see him on TV. And you come and say, you know what? I know you have never even completed P1. You probably have a small store, but I want you to be on Infreeze. You must buy a computer. The lady is telling you, my entire capital does not even, it's not even a computer.
Afford a screen.
Yeah, and they are saying, buy a computer, must be on Infreeze. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. When did we stop to be realistic and fail to look out for this ordinary person? To say, look, support these startups. And then as they grow, then you have a bigger tax base. Don't kill them at the starting level. So I think, for me, the issues that are very particular to us are those. I mean, you can as well talk about the palace politics that we are seeing now. I mean, when the crown prince is being processed to be, I'm told now there is a crown uncle, and then you have a crown prince, and then the handover will be probably in the north before the crown uncle. I mean, seriously, when did this country? No, seriously, you know, when you look at North Korea, it didn't just wake up and find itself where it is now. No. But it became more or less like a monarchy and very brutal at that. So some of these issues are so critical, but irrespective of the challenges that we have internally in our own organizations, they are so serious that we must really come out of them and speak collectively and begin engaging, and not just even as political parties. I mean, I speak for Alliance for National Transformation, ANT. I actually like the purple.
I think Chris,
can you please host the recruitment drive?
But you know, but on a critical note, I mean, seriously, there are these issues that make us nationals, make us Ugandans.
That's right.
That bring us together. And we must really engage beyond our partisan lines and say, look, I mean, what is the future for our country?
Yeah.
Okay.
And people worried what's going on, like what's going to happen. I mean, it's obvious that President Museveni really is about 8 years. So, I mean, if he fails in one way or the other, nature may set in. So, I mean, where is the certainty in this country?
But nature can also refuse.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, there is a book called 2 Weeks in November by Douglas Rogers about how power left the family of Robert Mugabe. He kept processing everything until one day when he made it so clear that the next president was going to be his wife. And even his best of friends said, okay, finally, this is the moment.
We've reached a point of no return.
Yes, so I think if anyone would really reach their first family and still they can still listen to anything, is that Uganda has had a very turbulent history. And so they would really listen to us, that for Ugandans to allow them lead this country for 40 years is not a small feat.
All right,
so they would allow us,
for the avoidance of doubt, Chris, Gerald is a neighbor to the first family.
He has good offices. You have good offices to do that. You have good offices to do that. No doubt about it. But gentlemen, allow me hold you in your tracks there, and of course ensure that we have a very straight line when it comes to this particular discussion. We cannot run away from the fact that those who are seeking political power must demonstrate the ability to govern. First, themselves, but also the country. And that is the kind of burden that the National Unity Platform finds itself in right now, the fight against corruption. I was talking to a gentleman who said...
But is it NUP or NT that should be fighting about corruption and not me, not you?
As an individual, of course, it lies entirely upon each individual and each one of us. Now let's individualize this and point the gun at Mpuga. Mpuga receives an award of 500 million Uganda shillings, as did other commissioners on as part of the 100 and not 100 but 1.7 billion haste. We call it a haste right now. And then he sees himself as being unfairly criticized for accepting a thank you. Is it a culture problem? The gentleman I was talking to last night told me that Mpuga is grappling with a conscience, that should he be the one to begin the culture of resignation when found in a tight spot.
Why shouldn't he?
Can he?
No,
must he?
No, if he has a conscience, he actually can. But maybe he doesn't believe that what he did was wrong. Because you see, there are awards.
Okay.
And awards can take different form. Even many of us in our small jobs, not the size of Mpuga, we've gotten our awards. They give you a certificate,
employee of the month,
employee of the year, exemplary service. They are awards.
But we rarely see it. Three of us and agree that no, management seems not to agree. For us, we've done a good job. Let's give us.
No, that's exactly my point. That at no point do you sit in a meeting and decide and say, so for me, I am awarded this, Chris is awarded this, Gerald is awarded this, that you are seated there making these decisions. And the money you are sharing does not belong to you. It belongs to the other person who sent you to protect it. Yeah, so for Mpuga, I think Matthias is a good gentleman for intents and purposes.
Okay.
But he finds himself in this crisis. And because of the nature of our politics and probably because there are no opportunities elsewhere, he knows that if I leave this job, I have a problem. But also, you now have also to relate it to the corruption in the parliament. Because you see, if I sit here as a Ugandan who pays taxes and looks at what is happening in the parliament, I cannot be sure that that 500 million was actually not negotiating for something. So I'm going to, because in this country now you have so many conspiracies of why certain things are happening. Was it actually 500 million or 500 million was negotiating for something?
What you say is correct.
We don't
because
know.
if I was seated here and all of a sudden I receive 500,000 Uganda shillings on my phone from Gerald Karuhanga, I'll ask myself the question, why?
Yeah.
How can this be a thing?
Especially if you're about to host him for a show. You're going to say, what is the guy
this all about?
Yes,
but you've been in the corridors of Parliament.
Appreciating the purple shirt, you know.
I told you to hold the recruitment. You've been in the corridors of Parliament and understand the workings of the Commission. At what point do you disagree or sympathize with the fact that anybody ought to be appreciated for a job done?
Chris, principle is principle. I think the colleague erred, honestly.
I think so.
You don't sit in a meeting where basically the item is discussing you and your colleagues who are in the same meeting, how they are going to benefit from this very meeting.
Or rather, how you're going to appreciate your own work.
So I think he's a colleague. He needs to really come to terms with it and say, ladies and gentlemen, fellow countrymen and women, I erred. I apologize, and therefore, as a Commissioner of Parliament, I tender in my resignation, and let me go and focus on representing my people. He would have made a better statement. He will come out as a more serious and respected leader. I mean, we make mistakes.
Absolutely.
We make mistakes. We are human beings. So owning up is one way of providing leadership. So we must build that culture as well and say, look, if this is what we are putting government strict standards, and so they must apply to us as well. So I think, and by the way, appreciating an error is not a weakness.
It's not a weakness. It's not.
It's actually a sense of humility
and responsibility.
But also it is, remember, we are a very young country. Whatever you do as a leader, there are so many young people learning and picking a leaf from you. So you ought to communicate to these young people and say, look, I have made this mistake. I pray none of you should make this mistake ever again. And so because of that, I think by tendering again my resignation, I make a statement and appeal to you Ugandans that this is the way to go.
All right, gentlemen, I think I would be completely unfair if I continue the discussion on Matthias Mpuga. That one is done and dusted.
Sure.
Let's now go to the issue that you very ably brought about, the building of what Godber describes as, is it monarchy?
This one is a caliphate.
It's a caliphate. A caliphate. You know, when you hear the word caliphate, when you hear the word caliphate, and then you go to the United Arab Emirates and you look at all these emirs and exactly how they wield power, a generation by generation, son, then grandson, and then it goes on and on. If this is what is being created, then there is need for paying attention to it. But the appointment of General Muhoozi Kainerugaba as CDF, of course, many say this has been in the process. It's been coming. There was the recent change of rules and governance principles within the Uganda People's Defense Forces, the establishment book, one that General Mbadi received. And of course, the books will go down in history as the CDF that was first to operate under the establishment book. But people say that actually the power was being shifted to Muhoozi Kainerugaba. Are we seeing Muhoozi president in 2026? That's a direct question. Say what you feel, say what you think, say what you know, which is most important.
Interesting.
So I think for me, my views have been written there because I'm a writer.
Tell us again.
Yeah, so I write in 2021, a colleague of mine, my colleague and I, we've been working with some thought leadership group.
Okay. Those are guys who think really
we
hard.
think that our business is thinking because that's what I do for a living.
Ah, wow.
Yeah. So we wrote a paper called Uganda Political Transition Scenarios to 2026 and beyond. And my argument in that paper, and which I still believe in, I think still valid, that Museveni's mental programming is that he's a life president. If anybody tells you that he's planning to hand over to someone, I would want to dispute that. I can even bet on it. So as long as he's breathing, he's the president. So you can't see a Muhoozi presidency in 2026.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's number one. Number two is that we explained that right now there is no government of Uganda as constituted under the constitution. Because under the constitution, government of Uganda is the president and his cabinet, and then the agencies of state. That's what you call the executive.
That's right.
Yeah, the president with cabinet, they make public policy, which shapes the direction of government. But right now, you have what we call the Holy Trinity. The Father, the Son, and we actually said unholy Spirit.
Maybe it's the unholy Trinity.
Who is the Holy Spirit?
It's maybe the unholy Trinity. Because for the respect of the godliness.
Yes, the unholy Trinity actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right,
I was actually pleasantly surprised when Anita Mong, the speaker, went to Bukedi and then said, oh, for us, this is our Trinity. I said, maybe she has read my paper, so she knows. Because as far as I'm concerned, right now, government is run by the president, President Museveni.
Yep.
It's run by his son and his brother. And the reason we are saying this is that it's unnormal to have Salim Saleh seated somewhere in Guru or where, and you see people from the vice president, prime minister, bishops, secretary to treasury, they are all driving to go to consult with some guy who has no official position in government. Now the problem with Uganda is that we've become so frightened that you can't talk about it.
You can't question that.
You can't talk about it because it's like you are being disrespectful, you are being biased. But I think that as a country, as a country,
Doomsday prophet.
So right now, because I think we're discussing somewhere about the cabinet, this new cabinet. Someone said cabinet reshuffle. I said no. You see, when the president says I have made minor changes in my cabinet,
he has amended the list.
Take it for what it is, because minor changes are minor changes.
Yeah.
When there is a cabinet reshuffle in governments that are organized and governments that are responsible, you do a cabinet reshuffle, you are basically signaling changes in government policy because of the people you are bringing together to run government. So when you see what President Museveni did, I think all the people who were brought into cabinet, they are assistant ministers. So those are of no consequence. But you see, we will spend like a whole month discussing something like that. And then you realize and say, as a country, we've been completely diverted. So right now, our challenge now, if we don't deal with the governance issues, by the way, because I've mentioned, I think Gerald and I have mentioned about the economic issues, the social sector issues like education and health and others. We've talked about the businesses. But Ugandans need to understand that unless you deal with the politics of this country, where you are dealing with the political transition, first of all, the efficiency of President Museveni's government, because I think this is a very bloated, inefficient government structure. And I think also the president knows that's why he has been juggling around with, merging of enterprises. They also know that it's inefficient. So that is there. Then you have the politics, where the government is almost the military, because President Museveni doesn't really think that these politicians, whether in NRM or even in opposition, that they are of any consequence. For him, what he's focused on is to know, as long as I have the military, that I run government the way I want. And he can do anything that he wants. That's why when MPs start, flexing muscles, he will either send them some money to calm them down, but we can also go to the extreme of sending in the military to deal with them, like he did with the age limit debate. So Ugandans must now gather the courage to deal with this. Let me make one last point. Because every time Ugandans, we are just focusing on opposition political parties. And I think we are being unfair to them.
Okay.
They are Ugandans organized in different formations. We have professional organizations, Uganda Law Society, Uganda Medical Association, Uganda Association of Engineers, all these are educated people. Many of them are accomplished. What do? How come for them they are quiet? They are all running and looking at ANT, looking at NUP. Why? They are religious institutions. What do? I think the last time you saw during COVID, you saw those all these clergy, the archbishops seated there in the State House. Museveni preaching to them like the Grand Ayatollah. And you look at this, these are archbishops. These are top clergy.
Yeah.
These are Ugandans are organized in those institutions. You can go to the business associations. These business associations, private sector foundation, chamber of commerce, the business people are dying. They are crying. Everybody who talks to them, they are crying, and then you say, but they are all hiding.
I'm glad you've used the word "they are all hiding" as your very last submission, because I was going to ask the question, or rather disabuse you putting me on the spot for discussing issues when there are those that are supposed to be given the.
No, they are hiding.
If they are hiding, why are they hiding?
Sometimes you look back and you check our neighbors. Let's say the influence of trade unions in South Africa. People will get together, teachers, farmers, miners. They'll get together and they will really challenge their government.
That's right.
Press it under immense pressure. These are humble people, miners, fellows in minerals who really, most of them are not even anyhow schooled. Teachers, primary teachers, they just get together and say, we want this changing. And eventually, because they bring the country together, then government has every reason to listen. So I think it's high time also as a country, we started building a culture of taking our national obligations and duties as citizens very seriously. Because many times we keep saying, but that parliament, I was in parliament for 10 years. And increasingly you could very visibly see that objective and critical citizens have shunned politics. So Ugandans will say, these things are wrong, we have no jobs. But then when it comes to say, okay, now can we really find some leaders? Let's get the right leaders. Then we all say, that's an area you don't want to go to. But this is what decides almost everything that happens to you. So I think is that intrusive engagement as a people that we need. We look into ourselves and say, but wait a minute, could it be entirely because this regime has lots of influence that's around, maybe also as us as citizens? In any case, the people they use are probably not largely foreigners, they are probably Ugandans. So I think we really need to, but that said, talking about militarization. Before you talk about militarization, I want to ensure that this point is actually well understood. Associations and entities of professionals, the fact that they don't have a voice that is significant enough, first to cause momentum in terms of what they say about certain things. We had a scenario where we had the president of the Uganda Medical Association appear to be a cadre, and he came under intense criticism for saying what he said and doing the antics that he went into. He's a professional. Now, when other professionals see their leader acting that way, saying the statements that he said, it leaves them in a position of uncertainty. Where should they go? How should they trade on this particular issue? So within these associations, within the community of professionals, is there a resignation, or it is simply a case of where they must protect the little they have? Because we must be very honest about it. You are right. I mean, the doctors were very right to be very angry at seeing their leader literally embarrass them. That was a huge embarrassment. Kneeling down and, I was like, wow. I mean, we need to really examine that seriously. Why is it that you get a body, let's say like the Law Society? These are lawyers. Incidentally, I think both of us are lawyers here. So you wonder like how come that? Because I mean, when you study the law, you appreciate what it is and how it protects you as a citizen. So how come a body like that is not very strong, but especially when it comes to human rights abuses?
But Gerald, if you don't mind, on that particular issue, you say I want Ugandans to understand that it's not only Uganda, but when you in any country where there is state capture, that's exactly what you get. Because what happens when there is state capture? First of all, the institutions of state are demobilized and they become dysfunctional. So when you look at our current state now, so what we're saying in Parliament is demobilized and dysfunctional. So people who are looking at it, they say that is useless. True. Yeah. True. So you look at and if you talk to people in the different agencies, you'll see the resignation. I work with a number of government agencies. You help them draft, and they ask you to help them formulate a particular policy. You go there and burn your midnight candles, and you come up with a policy. At the point when it is supposed to be moving towards cabinet, they say the problem is that this thing will not even move. So you see that. Then, so that is on the state. It's called state capture. Yeah. Regimes like ours, where you have someone who wants to be the life president, the second thing they do is to demobilize institutions of citizenship. So in other words, what are those institutions? Ugandans, in terms of their citizenship, you as an individual, Chris, you can't do much. Me as an individual can't do much. But when we are collectively organized, we begin to have a voice. So if you are a president like Museveni, you know that Ugandans organized in religious institutions. So you have to capture the religious leaders. They work for you. Yeah. Then you will see when there are elections, including very small elections of these small associations, if you follow, you'll see how much resources and effort the regime puts in to make sure that the president of the Royal Society or whoever, or the medical association is aligned to us. You will see Ugandans are organized ethnically, these ethnic nationalities. So you get all these regions, Ankore, Toro, Achori, what? You break them into these small villages. Now, I'll end by saying, so in Uganda right now, you can't go in Ankore and you hear people saying, we are Banyankore. This one is from Muntungamo, the other one is from Metoma, this one is from Urubirizi. Completely meaningless things. But if these were Banyankore, they would be there negotiating what is it for us. I think in this country right now, there are only two regions that talk to themselves as nationalities are the Achoris and Baganda. The rest have been completely demobilized. So that's exactly what you are seeing.
Could that be an advantage? That
so until we are able to reconstitute those citizens' institutions, our fighting chances are very limited because the regime has you by.
Honorable Karuhanga had a point he wanted to.
I mean, I was a student leader, and we had very strong student unions. The guild was something, and then. And I still, all this is still connected to the military. Then we saw the intelligence come in. Yeah, exactly. And all they wanted was, this one is not aligned to us, so we must make sure he doesn't go through. And the students would be very strong and say they would really resist it until eventually they worked out ways of breaking that down. Now, I think what we really must do as citizens, we must engage ourselves and say, look, this is our country. This is our country. The usage has been the military in every sense. I mean, you have the introduction of the 10 MPs in Parliament in the 95 Constitution. And then onwards, you see, look at the cabinet, for instance. The generals in cabinet today. Yeah? You have General Tafile, General Muhwezi, General Muhozi, General Mbadi, they have General Jejo Dongo. Precisely, it is, and then you have permanent secretaries who are also generals. Yeah. Now you can imagine they report to the permanent secretary, Minister of Finance, on the financial aspects. So you can imagine a general, he walks in, and he's supposed to report to you, and you are the humble permanent secretary. There is a record that you may say, boss, you can have my seat. I will sit to the other side. so you can see how the usage of the military has really destroyed the state structure and how a country should be run on institutions. And so that's what we want to focus on. And that's why for us at ANT we are saying the restoration of institutions, institutional power must happen, and Ugandans must work towards recapturing their own country.
All right, gentlemen, I'm afraid we're going to have to end this discussion. I'll give each of you 60 broadcasting seconds, and that is exactly it to do a wrap.
No, I mean, for me, the only thing I can do is to call upon Ugandans in our different, in our respective capacities, that is, as individuals in our associations, and say, this country has been literally stolen from us. If you look at the way the regime operates, the way they are pillaging and plundering public resources, the country has been stolen from us, and we are not going to start looking at different groups of people, whether they are political parties or what, and say, you are the ones who are going to save us. We have to save ourselves. I think what we need is to be organizing what I call collective citizen resistance.
Collective citizen resistance.
To be able to say, we need our country back. We need our institutions to function.
You're beginning to make me think Kizza Besigye will come up with a new one.
Yeah, if he can, I think, and because I mean, I give credit to Dr. Besigye for the kind of resistance he has mounted. Yeah. But again, Uganda has tried to say, oh, KB will save us, Bobby Wine will save us. I say no, we have to save ourselves. We are all together. We are in this thing together. If we don't do it, we are in big trouble.
Honorable Karuhanga.
Yes, every society has what is largely termed as the common good. That everyone appreciates that having democratic governance is the way to go, that having equitable distribution of resources, at having a people that have dignity, that they are so proud of being citizens of that country, and have freedom, enjoy and work for the progress of their country. That common good must bring us together. That irrespective of how we look at things, because you see, for close to 40 years now, we've been heavily put into cocoons. Yeah. So boxed in one corner, and then another corner, and then another grouping, and so we've ceased to realize that we are Ugandans, that there is a country. God decided that among all nations in the world, we are citizens of Uganda. And so I appeal strongly to every Ugandan out there that, look, let's own our country. Let's take charge of it. Let's provide the leadership that it needs. We will certainly get there and be a great and powerful country.
Gerald Karuhanga from the Alliance for National Transformation, many thanks for that perspective and the submissions. I will not fall for the recruitment drive. And many thanks to you too, Godber Tumushabe, seasoned political analyst and commentator, for making time for Morning at NTV. It's been a pleasure to have you both. Now, let's go for a break. When we return, we shall be speaking of matters that literally are what we've been talking about. The education